So let's learn more about scalar variables in Perl 5. So a while ago, I just told you that scalar variables start with a $sign and they're primarily used for representing numbers and strings. Well, Perl does not really differentiate numbers and strings as data. They both are seen alike. I would say that Perl just treats everything as a string. It's only the operators, the built-in operators, and a couple of expressions that deal with mostly, I would say, functions that might actually differentiate strings and numbers. Here are some examples which I will show you on how you can create a scalar variable and store some data in it, and you will see different ways you can represent data now, right? Okay, so let's start with the first variable. I'll just say $value1 is equal to, I'm just going to type 10 apples. We all know that's a string, right? 10 apples is a string. It's in quotes. $value2 is equal to 20 oranges. And we know there are two strings here. If I now say $result is equal to $value1 plus $value2, what do you think is the outcome? Well, think for a while. What do you think is the outcome of this expression? So if I'm just going to say print result is equal to $result, what do you think would be printed? Well, those of you who come from other language backgrounds like Python or JavaScript or even Java would assume that this is some kind of a string concatenation, right? You'll think it's going to print 10 apples, 20 oranges. And that's a common answer I get in my trainings. But let's find out if that's it in reality. So when I try running this, surprising, the result is 30. Well, you might wonder what's going on here. Well, Perl, as it seems, it has common sense, just like us. Just like to human beings, if I just show a basket of 10 apples and a basket of 20 oranges and ask him or her to count how many are there, the obvious answer I might get is 30, right? 30 fruits. But that's what Perl seems to have done. But I'll tell you in reality what really happened. It is the plus operator that determines the operands. The plus operator expects both operands to be numeric. So whatever scalars you pass in here, it's going to treat those scalars as numbers. Now, another obvious question you might ask is, what if there are strings that has special characters in the beginning, not numeric in general? Let's say something like, even if I just type 10,000 apples, right? Will it make any difference? You know that comma is not part of the syntax grammar for treating a number, right? In Perl. So if I try running this now, the result is still 30. Well, if I try to say A 10 apples, B 20 oranges, and let's look up the result this time, it shows up as 0. Well, you can see what happens in this case. The plus operator expects both operands to be numeric as a scalar. If you don't pass a scalar, you'll get a scalar context of an expression. There's something called scalar context and list context of every single expression in Perl. That's a very interesting feature. So any expression you pass as a scalar, what is the result? Could be something else. As a list, the outcome could be something else. We'll discuss about that in a while, right? We'll talk about that in the future videos. But now just know that when you pass an operand in here, which is already a scalar, it expects this to start with a digit, a decimal digit. If it doesn't start with a decimal digit, it'll assume it's 0. It'll just take the equivalent of it in numeric as 0. But if it starts with a decimal digit, until it encounters a non-digit character, whatever characters are found, it is extracted and that's treated as a number. So 10 apples, after 10 there's a space. That becomes a stop character, right? After space, everything else is ignored. So only the first token of 10 is taken in as a numeric value in this case. And for the second, it's going to take, when I try 20 oranges, it's going to take 20 as a numerical representation. So it's not really differentiating numbers and strings as two different data types. That's what it is in Perl. Well, in many languages, you see string as a different data type and numbers are different data types. Like in fact, you can see things like float and integer as different types. But Perl Technically, it's just called scalars, and it can just hold strings of digits, strings of any characters. When you have strings of digits, there are some operators that will take the numerical component of it and try to do math, right? Like all the arithmetic operators that involve plus, minus, multiply, divide, they take care of that. In this case, you can just see an example. Here's an example where I showed you how you can see that plus operator treats everything as a number. So some of you might ask me, what if I want to concatenate them? I don't want to add them up, right? If you really want to concatenate, you need to use a dedicated operator for that. Let's say dollar, I'll just say $result2 is equal to $value1 dot $value2. This is concatenation operator. At this point, you should learn one thing about Perl. Perl has no support for operator overloading, like in C++ or Java. So there are certain operators which will see if the both operands are numbers, they'll do addition. If both operands are strings, they do concatenation. This kind of duality or multiple behavior traits that you find, we call them as polymorphism, right? In object-oriented world, such a feature does not exist in Perl. Every single operator in Perl has a distinct use case. You cannot use the same operator for doing concatenation and also arithmetic addition. That's why there's a separate operator for string concatenation. There's a separate operator for arithmetic addition. So when I try to print result in this case, result2 in this case, you can see it will be a string concatenation, and it doesn't really matter how you store it. You can see that result2 is 10 apples, 20 oranges. Well, what if I make some changes in here where I'll just say value1 is not really strings in quotes, but let me try something else. I'll just try value1 is a bare word, right? What is a bare word? Anything that's not in quotes is called as bare word in Perl world. So if I'm just going to use numerical data like this, 1, 2, 3, 4. Technically, you just assign the number to value1. That's what you say, right? But the low level, it's a bare word notation. So numbers can be represented bare word without a problem. Strings, it is allowed, but the moment you use strict and use warnings, you might get some warning message when you use bare words for representing strings. We'll talk about that in a while. So here I just have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, 7. It doesn't matter. Okay, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I have value 1 and value 2 assigned to numbers. This is arithmetic addition. I didn't think there's going to be any problem. But what about string concatenation? Will it get concatenated as a string? Yes, indeed. We can just see the result in this case. This is the sum of these two numbers. I mean, if you do the math, if you add them up, this is what you get. And what about the dot operator? The dot operator performed concatenation. You can see this 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's treated as one single resultant string, right? So this is something they should know about numbers versus strings, how they are treated in Perl. So Perl does not differentiate at all. Coming to this point, what are the string features you can run on numbers? For example, you want to find out how many digits are there in a number. It's very straightforward. Let me give you an example for that. Let's say $s is equal to hello world. If I now want to find out the length of the string, I can use a built-in function called length. I can say print length of $s. I'm going to end with a /n here this way. You can see the length of the string $s is 11. That means there are 11 characters in the string. If you want to check with digits, let's say if I say $n is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But if I now say length of $n, Perl doesn't differentiate this. It's just a string. So length function just treats whatever argument you pass as a string data and tries to find out how many characters are there in the string. So if you just try it out now, you can see it shows there are 5 characters in this number. So what you learn from this is that Perl as a language core does not differentiate strings and numbers. But some operators treat anything that you pass as strings and work accordingly. there are certain operators and functions that treat whatever you pass as numeric and work accordingly. If it's not numeric, they'll just assume it will be 0. Right? If you remember that A10 apples and B20 oranges showed up as 0 in a numerical context, that's how it works. So there are a lot of things that Perl does internally, and this can make it a little confusing as a newbie. But once you understand the underlying rules on how Perl tries to treat every expression or every statement at a fundamental level, understanding complex code is not going to be that challenging.